How mastering English changed my life forever. The beginning of my English journey. I remember the first time I opened an English textbook. The words on the page looked completely unfamiliar to me, as if I had stepped into a foreign land where nothing made sense. Intimidating, to say the least. Learning English felt like being asked to climb a mountain with no map, no guide, and only the faintest idea of what awaited me at the summit. The very idea of mastering this language seemed impossible. At that time, I wasn't sure why I was even doing it. To give you some context, English wasn't a common language in my environment. Where I grew up, people spoke their native tongue, and the need for English was minimal. Most of my friends and family didn't see why I was so interested in learning it. They believed that knowing our local language was more than enough to get by, and in many ways, they were right. I could have lived a comfortable life without English, but deep inside, I knew that learning this language could unlock opportunities one hadn't yet imagined. Back then, I was just a student, like many of you, attending classes, doing my homework, and hoping to pass my exams. But even as I went through the motions of my daily life, I had this nagging feeling that English could offer me something more. It wasn't just about improving my grades or impressing others. It was about connecting with the world beyond my immediate surroundings. It was about reaching for something bigger than myself. But where would I even start? I still remember that initial stage, filled with uncertainty and frustration. My vocabulary was almost non-existent, and my grammar was terrible. I constantly mixed up tenses and found myself tongue-tied when trying to speak. The feeling of being lost was overwhelming, but I didn't let it stop me. I told myself that every journey begins with a single step, and learning English would be no different. I needed to focus on small victories, one new word, one phrase, one sentence at a time. At first, I approached learning English the same way I approached any other subject in school, through textbooks and exercises. I memorized vocabulary lists, practiced grammar rules, and spent hours poring over practice exercises. It wasn't glamorous or exciting, but I knew it was necessary. What I didn't realize at the time was that this slow and steady approach would lay the foundation for everything that was to come. Every word I learned, every mistake I corrected, was like planting a seed that would eventually grow into something much larger. Every word I learned, every mistake I corrected, was like planting a seed that would eventually grow into something much larger. As much as I wanted to master English, I couldn't escape the self-doubt that plagued me. Learning a new language is hard, but what made it even harder was the fear of failing. I kept wondering if I was wasting my time. The voices in my head kept asking, "Why are you putting yourself through this? Why not just stick with what you know?" I wasn't confident in my abilities, and that lack of confidence held me back for a long time. Every time I attempted to speak English, I felt a surge of anxiety. I'd start a sentence and then stop halfway, unsure if I was using the right words or tense. I'd replay conversations in my mind, thinking of all the ways I could have said things differently and better. This fear of making mistakes made me hesitant to practice speaking, which is one of the most important parts of learning any language. But here's the thing, you don't get better by avoiding your fears. You get better by facing them head-on. I knew that if I wanted to improve my English, I had to let go of my fear of failure. I had to accept that making mistakes was part of the process. In fact, mistakes were not just inevitable, they were necessary. Every mistake I made was a lesson, a step toward fluency. The first time I held a full conversation in English was a pivotal moment for me. It wasn't perfect, and I made several errors, but the fact that I was able to express myself and be understood was a breakthrough. I realized that fluency doesn't mean perfection. It means being able to communicate effectively, even if you don't always get everything right. This shift in perspective helped me relax and approach English with a new mindset. Instead of fearing mistakes, I embraced them as opportunities to learn. Once I overcame my fear of speaking, I became obsessed with immersing myself in English as much as possible. I knew that the only way to truly master the language was to live and breathe it every day. So, I made a plan. I started watching English language movies and TV shows without subtitles, listening to English podcasts and music, reading books, and even journaling in English. I treated each movie, podcast, or book as an adventure, a chance to discover new words and phrases that I could add to my growing arsenal. The great thing about immersing yourself in a language is that you're constantly learning without even realizing it. I started noticing patterns in the way people spoke in movies, the idiomatic expressions they used, and the different accents. I began to pick up on nuances that I would have missed if I were only studying from a textbook. Every movie or book became a lesson, but it didn't feel like studying. It felt like I was connecting with the language on a deeper level. As I continued this immersive approach, something incredible happened. I started to think in English. I no longer had to mentally translate everything from my native language. My brain was beginning to process English naturally, without the extra step of translation. This was a huge breakthrough for me because it meant that I was becoming more fluent, more comfortable with the language. As my English improved, I found myself able to break through language barriers that had previously seemed insurmountable. One of the most significant moments came when I applied for a job with an international company. I had always dreamed of working for a global organization, but I knew that English fluency was a requirement. At the time, I wasn't sure if I was ready, but I decided to take a chance. The interview was conducted entirely in English, and I was terrified. This was one of the first times I had to use English in a high-stakes situation, and the pressure was immense. But instead of letting my fear control me, I drew on all the skills I had built over the years. I reminded myself that I had practiced for this moment, through the conversations I'd had, the books I'd read, the movies I'd watched. I was ready. To my surprise, the interview went well. I was able to articulate my thoughts clearly and respond to questions confidently. I realized that all the hard work I had put into mastering English had paid off in this crucial moment. When I received the job offer a few days later, I was over the moon. This was proof that learning English had opened a door I never could have walked through otherwise. That job was a turning point in my life. It wasn't just about having a paycheck, it was about being part of a global community. I worked with people from different countries, participated in international meetings, and contributed to projects that spanned continents. Every day, I used English to communicate with my colleagues, and each interaction helped me refine my skills even further. English was no longer just a subject I was studying. It had become a key that unlocked new opportunities and experiences. One of the most rewarding aspects of mastering English was the relationships I was able to build with people from all over the world. English is the global language, and being fluent in it allowed me to connect with individuals I never would have been able to talk to otherwise. This was especially true when I started participating in online communities and forums where people from different countries would gather to discuss everything from culture to technology to personal growth. At first, these online conversations felt daunting. I was still nervous about making mistakes, especially in written English where people had more time to scrutinize my words. But as I engaged more and more with these communities, my confidence grew. I realized that people weren't focused on my mistakes. They cared about what I had to say. This gave me the courage to dive deeper into these interactions. Some of the most meaningful friendships I've ever made came from these online communities. Through English, I was able to connect with people from places like the United States, the UK, Australia, and even countries in Asia and Africa. We exchanged ideas, shared our experiences, and learned from one another. These friendships transcended borders, and they made me realize how small the world can feel when you have a common language to bridge the gap. One of the best examples of this came when I was invited to visit a friend I had met online. He lived in another country, one that I had always wanted to visit. Without hesitation, I accepted the invitation, and soon I found myself on a plane, traveling to a place I had only read about in books. When I arrived, I was welcomed with open arms, and my friend introduced me to his culture, his family, and his way of life. The entire experience was life-changing, and it wouldn't have been possible without English. As my English skills continued to grow, I felt a deep desire to give back to the community that had helped me along the way. I wanted to help others who were struggling with the same challenges I had faced. That's when I started tutoring. At first, it was informal. I would help classmates or friends who were having trouble with their English assignments. But soon, I realized that I loved teaching. There's something incredibly rewarding about helping someone else unlock their potential. Watching my students grow in confidence and skill was a joy, and it made me realize that teaching was something I wanted to pursue more seriously. Some of my students used the tips I've shared to pass their English exams. Others have gained the confidence to apply for jobs, and many have simply improved their communication skills. Knowing that I've made a positive impact on someone's life is the greatest reward I could ask for. As I look back on my journey, I can say with absolute certainty that mastering English changed my life forever. It wasn't just about learning a new language. It was about gaining the confidence to pursue my dreams, the skills to navigate a globalized world, and the connections that have enriched my life in ways I never thought possible. English became the bridge that connected me to opportunities, experiences, and people that I would never have encountered otherwise. It gave me the tools to break through barriers, both literal and metaphorical, and to explore a world that had previously been out of reach. It opened doors to jobs, friendships, and personal growth that I hadn't even known existed. Mastering English wasn't easy. It took time, dedication, and a willingness to face my fears. But every challenge I encountered along the way made me stronger, and every success reinforced my belief that I was on the right path. Today, English is not just a skill I have, it's a part of who I am. It's a key that continues to unlock new possibilities, and it's a gift that I'm grateful for every day. For those of you watching this video and thinking about your own English journey, I want to leave you with this: don't give up. The road ahead may be tough, but the rewards are immeasurable. Whether you're just starting out or you've been learning English for years, know that every step you take brings you closer to your goals. Keep pushing forward, keep practicing, and soon you'll see just how far you can go. Mastering English can change your life, just as it changed mine. The world is full of opportunities waiting to be discovered, and English is your key to unlocking them. Stay motivated, stay curious, and remember that every word you learn brings you closer to the future you've always dreamed of. Your journey is just beginning.